All right. So in our last class, we started looking at data cleaning functions in Python, where I told us that after you have successfully loaded your data as a data analyst, you are expected to do some findings. Hope you are with me. To do some findings on
Yes.
the data set you are given. And I told us several reasons why you should always go that way as a professional data analyst. There is need for you to always inspect your data before you start analyzing them, knowing fully that you are not the one that computed the data. So there is need for you to understand the data so that at the end of the day, you can derive meaningful insights that could aid decision making. And that is what we started learning the other time. So, but before that, I taught us that we need to get some libraries imported. So once you are not hearing me, you let me know. You need to get some libraries imported into
Okay.
your development environment. And I told us that these libraries offer a set of functions which we will be using to exploit our data for insights. So I started by importing the first library, which is called the pandas, which I said the focus of this library is to offer us functions that will help us to manipulate, perform several calculations on our data, including a function that will help us to read our data set into the development environment. We also imported another supporting library, which is called the NumPy. And I told us that the NumPy helps, or the NumPy is in charge of making Python to load and to frame large data sets. So this is where we actually loaded the entire data with this name and store it in a variable called data1. Now this is the output of the data, the first one we loaded. Now we also talk about learning how to import different types of file formats, particularly the most used file format across data analytics platform or tools, CSV or Excel file. So this is where we learned how to import a CSV data file into the notebook. This is where we also learned how to import Excel data file also into our notebook. Then here we loaded another data set, which is healthcare data sets also. So as it stands now, we have three different data frame or data sets on our notebook ready to be analyzed. Now, we started with data inspection method in Python. So I told us that once you load your data here, the first thing you should do is to check certain information about that data. And in doing that, we involve different Python functions, different Python attributes. And that is what we started doing here. So at this point here, this is where we use the dot shape. If you can still remember, the dot shape help us to analyze the total numbers of records in the data you loaded and also the total number of features or the attributes which are commonly known as the headers in the data set. So we also learn how to extract only the headers in the given data set using a function called the dot columns. So the dot column, I told us that it helps us to call out only the headers or the features in your data set. And I also cited some of the genuine reasons why we are doing this. We are not just doing this for fun. We are doing this in order to understand our data so that at the end of the day, we can construct effective analysis questions that will lead to drawing positive insights from any data we are analyzing. So this is the output or outcome of the dot column. So these are the headers in the data set called healthcare. So from here, as a data analyst, you can now begin to know, okay, this data is made up of name, age, and it's made up of name, age, gender, blood type, medical condition, date of admission, doctor, hospital, insurance provider, billing amount, room number, admission type, discharge date, medication, test results. Now, here we did how to summarize information about our data set. I also pointed out that this is very essential to us because it helps us to have a uh, comprehensive information about our data set. This is where it's telling us the total number of record. This is where it's telling us the total number of column, and of course, listing out all the headers and also analyzing the various data types under each of these headers. That is what we did. And then we also check for missing values. We check for missing value. I told us that this is very, very important. You do it because when you search for missing value, it will help you to remove them or to probably set them to a constant value like 0, which will not contradict any of your analysis. So when we run the function, this is what we got. And I told us that wherever you see false means that there is no missing value. So wherever you see true means that there is a missing value. So you can see the last column here. I believe we are trying to add additional row, additional record to the data set where we only supply the serial number, well, but we did not supply some column. I think we are trying to do total of everything under a particular column. So that's why you can see that here we have false, and every other cells are indicating that we don't have any values there. So that is where we stop. And I want to know if this recapping has helped you in any way, sir.
Yes, it did.
Okay,
Yes, it
good.
did, sir.
Okay, so please let's learn to be reversing like on Friday before our classes on Saturday. This is very important to avoid not following. Okay, so we are still on this slide where I have been talking about some of those functions that I just glanced through right now. Now, if you look at this, so we just be confirming together, we've gone past this, we've applied this. This is where we were importing the CSV file, and this is where we were loading a Excel file. This is where we check for the width and the height of the data set. This is where we display only data from the data features or headers, the one I just mentioned. So this is where we check for data information using the .info. This is where we check for missing value, the one I just concluded with right now. And this is where we talked about how to describe your data set frame. I think we have not applied this, so we are starting right away from this very one here. So what do we mean by describing your data? Now, this function is actually a statistical function. It's actually a statistical function that helps us to summarize our data sets with some basic statistical functions. Are you with me, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, all right. Now, so there are some basic statistical functions that you can actually use to summarize your data. So this is not, I will not say this is actually a complete data cleaning function in Python. But there's a reason why we are bringing it here, because there are some details it also provides as regards to data cleaning, some of the data cleaning functions that we have run. So how do we apply it? So let me quickly go to my development environment. And like I told us that I'll be using comment to explain some of these things we do. Don't forget, I told us that it is very essential that we use the concept of comment while we are programming, because it helps us to explain our code to ourselves and to the third party. So whatever you want to do, even if you are given assignment, learn to use comment to expatiate. So now, what are we about to learn? We are learning to describe, how to describe our data sets. So once you are given a data set, you want to summarize it with this statistical function, which has other statistical functions. You just run dot describe. So how to describe data sets with dot describe, dot describe. So what is the syntax? So the syntax is simply, remember what I told us about syntax in programming? Syntax are the rules. You are the rules that governs writing of a particular program codes. So the syntax for us to be able to describe this data set is simply referencing the data set variable name. Don't forget that we have created a variable called healthcare, and that variable is currently holding the whole of this data frame. So the center is simply attaching the dot describe to the name of your variable or to the name of the data set. So which means that I will just do something like this, head care, which is the name of my data set recognized here in Python. I will just concatenate. To concatenate means to join. Want to say something? To concatenate means to join, and which is represented with the period called full stop. Now, once you have done that, you can now bring in your function, and then you run your code, and then you can see what we have here. So what the function have done actually is to summarize the whole of this data set with this set of statistical function. So let me just go through interpreting them one after the other, or let me just focus on the major one. Now, when we ran the .info, we got to know that the total numbers of record we have in that data frame are 55,502. But the describe has also counted, and we have that answer here. So this is the reason why I said it is not completely a data cleaning function in Python, but there are some details that we are provided by some of those data cleaning features that we can get here as well. So what is counted is that you can see that under age, you have this number of record. Under billing amount, you have the same number of record. But there is something spectacular here. You will discover that in that data set, if you run that function, healthcare, I just want us to see something. If you run healthcare dot columns, dot columns, dot columns, you will notice that it will call outwards the it will call out dot column. So when you have this kind of issue, Let's check. What is said is what is not defined. Healthcare. Okay, my spelling is wrong. So let me add that and then I run again. So you can see that dot column calls out more than what the number of columns that are analyzed by the dot describe. So what actually happened is that this describe only focus on the column with numbers. Are you with me, sir?
Okay.
Good. Now, all
Okay.
these other columns like gender, they have string as values under them. So it did not recognize them. It only recognized the column with what? Value, like with integer or float as part of Python numbers. So now here, this is the mean, the average. So what it's saying is that the average of all the values under H is this. The average of all the values under billing amount is this, and the average of all the values under what room number is this. Then under standard deviation is just like the square root of the variance. So if, for
Mm.
those of us that did a part of statistics, you understand that. So now,
Yeah.
minimum, this is where it's analyzing the lists under each of these specified column. So this is the list age, in case you want to know. This is the list age recorded under what age. Then this is the list billing amount recorded under that. And this is the list also recorded under the. Then this is some random percentage analysis the function did before the maximum. This is the highest under each. This is the highest under billing amount, and this is the highest under row number. So that is what it actually did. But there is something funny or wonderful you can actually do with this. Now, what it does describe did is to harbor or to give us an analysis or a kind of summarization that include these functions. So of which, as an expert, you can decide to perform individual analysis with this function. So I can say head, I can say healthcare dot counts on its own. And then when I run it, it will give me what? Its own analysis without going through the describe. So it will count all the values under each of the column. But you can see some differences here. You will notice that here, this counting, this individual counting, counted across all the headers. But the count function that was used by describe counted only what? Only the headers with what number? Did you observe that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this is just like a backup in case you still want to know the counting of other columns that are not number based. You can run it individually instead of running it under describe. So I can as well do the same. I can say head here dot minimum if I want to know the minimum of each column. Loading. Okay, so there's an error. So let's debug the error. So the error says not supported between what instance or what string and floats. So let's see if healthcare. Okay, so I decided to run it as an attribute since running it as a function could not display any meaningful results. So if we are to interpret this, so under each of these headers, so this is not actually giving me the proper So let me run it again. I believe there was something wrong. So let me run my entire cell again
Sure.
just to be sure if the error is from somewhere. Okay, because I know that it has worked before. So let me try for maximum and see. So if it doesn't work, we use the attribute method. So I believe there is an update that needs to be done. So let me use the attribute method to proceed. I know I've confirmed all this before now. So the attribute method is actually analyzing it. So what it's doing is that under each of the column, you are currently analyzing the maximum. But the other way I wanted to do will have given us a better view, just like the way it's presented here. Okay, so that is just to let you know that you can actually run this statistical function individually on your data sets. So you can try it. It might just work for you on your notebook. So let's quickly go to the next one because of time. So the next one is, so we want to now look at data cleaning techniques. So here we are, okay. Oh, it returned me back to where I started from. Okay. So here, now we want to start the cleaning. I think I was correct. Here we want to start the cleaning properly. So what we have been doing all this while is simply inspecting our data, trying to study the data with those features or functions to understand it better. So this aspect we are going into now is to start removing what is not there or changing things within the data set, which is what we call data cleaning. And it's very essential because when you start analyzing erroneous data, then you are bound to have erroneous what output, which may not be healthy for guiding the organization when it comes to decision making. It means that you are wrongly leading them to destruction. So the first data cleaning we want to look at is how to rename the column. So there are several instances where, to save our time, let me just see if we can just so if I could just go to my development environment. So what we are learning here right now is very, very important. Data, let me just reframe it to data handling / cleaning in Python. So the first thing we are doing here is how to rename your column. Now, let me just point out the reason why you need this function. Look at this. When we called out if we do dot column, let me make it a comment for now. If we do dot column dot, let's say head care dot column, healthcare dot column. Now you will notice that there are some headers that have space in between them. Are you with me, sir? There are headers
Yeah.
that have space in between them, and they are not healthy to be processed in some cases as far as Python is concerned. Remember, I have already advised us that we should avoid this, even in Excel or any application you are using to collect the data. If you have intention of analyzing it with Python, you need to avoid giving empty space. So that empty space, the Python as a programming language usually have issue with it, knowing what type of data is within here. So Python is going to find it difficult to know whether this is a string, whether this is a number, whether this is a boolean, or this is other what advanced data types. So to make the work easier, there are times when we start selecting some features later, we will now start noticing that Python will be developing some error because we are selecting a column that is not properly structured. So these are part of the things you need to correct, because at the point this data was collected by the data entry personnel, they did not know that you are going to handle it in Python. So for that reason, they did not consider this. So what you are doing right now is to correct it. So any form of correction that you implement on the given data set falls under cleaning. It means you are reprocessing the data, you are perfecting the data, and that is how it should be. We spend 80% of our time cleaning data, then we spend just 20% what? Analyzing them. That is the standard, particularly if you take it further to machine learning or data science. Because there we are going to be passing the clean data into an analytics what model. So which means that when you pass such an unclean data into analytics model, then it is garbage in, garbage out. So we cannot afford to make such mistake, and that's the reason why we are starting with the cleaning aspect before we enter the analysis aspect. So the aspect we are right now is for us to perfect our data first before we can start analyzing it. So, and one of the things we are doing, which this data is involved with, is what removing the space between the header or changing the name entirely. There could be some cases where you want to use a kind of acronym to represent them. For example, now BT to represent what? Blood type. So how do you change such? That is what we want to do. Now, this syntax has said it, or let me explain it before I implement it. Now, the DF represents the name of the data set you want to modify its headers. Then the rename is the function name. And how do I know that is a function? You can see the parentheses attached to it. And everything inside that parenthesis is called, or they are called inputs or parameter. In other words, those are the requirements. They are different data that the function require to function. So the first one is where you define the column name, the old one, and the new one. So just take a note, just look at this section here. So from here to here is where you point out the old name. For example, as we are going to change blood type to what? BT. So you first of all call out the old name, and then you add column. This is just like dictionary. Then you will now supply what? The value that will replace it. Then this is another one. This is the value that will follow it. If you want to change up to 5 different headers description, this is how you continue with the formats. Then at the end of the day, you add these attributes, which is what? In place, true, which means you are confirming that what? The new one should replace the old one. So to simply apply this, just a minute. So to simply apply this, what we are going to do is to just copy it, and then I will just show you how to edit it. Control C. So let me just paste it here. So now what I'm going to do, so you can see the essence of the column. The column has helped you to bring out the values. So the next thing I'm going to do is to substitute my data name here, which is health here. Are you following, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, column is a constant attribute. It should not be deleted. Then here, I'll highlight this. In fact, let me just come here and take it like this. It's better. Control C. Then replace it with this as the old header in the data set, the one you are changing. Then the new one will now be the one you are bringing. So which I want to represent is what? BT. I can just say BT. No, let me make it capital letter BT. So that is for that one. So I will have changed that one. Another one I want to change is this. Just give me 1 minute. All right, sorry about that. So another one I want to change is the medical word condition. So I will also copy it, Control C, and then simply replace it with the old one as well. Then if I still want to change another one, so what I'm going to do is to bring in a column here and then also add my string. Also add my string. So I put the old one here. So this is the new one. So let's say we are changing this. Changing this as well. Control C. And then we are replacing it with, sorry, we have not edited it for medical condition. So medical condition, I want to replace it what? With D. So which means that here, at this point here, it's not this that I need. I will just what? Bring a comma and then create another string, then put column in between them, then another word string. So let's say I want to change which other word again, billing amount. So this is how you go about it until you successfully change all the header that are affected. So I'm changing here to BA or B amount. So once you are done with this, the next thing you are going to do is to make sure that what you have this attribute added. And then the next thing is for me to execute it and see if I am correct. I'll just click on the run. So once it reads a value here, is a confirmation that your code has been accepted. So let's quickly go to. So let's call the data again and find out if we have actually changed them. So I'll just call the healthcare again here, healthcare data set, and run it. So now let me go to the headers where we make those amendments. You can see that what they have been replaced. So you can have what BT, MD, and the rest.
Yeah, that's true.
Is it correct?
Yes.
All right. So because you might think of why should I go to Excel to go and change this? What about if the data is beyond Excel capacity? Remember, you were told or you were taught that Excel can only handle 1,048,576 records per sheet. If the record was actually collected in a website which has exceeded that number, and you load it here, just because you are trying to avoid this function, you now decide to take it to Excel. Will Excel be able to load it? The answer is no. So that is why you have to learn some of these things here. So that is how, in case you load any data set that comes with our unstructured or unsupported header layout or structure, you restructure it, you rename it with this function called what? Rename. So if that is clear, let me look at another one quickly. So let's quickly look at how to drop what? Missing value in a row. Now, what do we mean by dropping missing value? Sorry, but